Hey everyone, I'm Dan from JazzComposersPresent.com, an online space where composers, musicians, and listeners come together to celebrate the music we love. I'm here today with Scott Ninmer, trombonist, composer, and staff arranger for the President's Own United States Marine Band. Scott is here to talk to us about developing motifs using set theory.
Thank you, Dan. The set theory provides us with a number of tools to create and develop our musical ideas based on motives that we've written. And I find that it's particularly useful in an atonal setting. So let's take a look and a listen to a 6-note set that I wrote. So you can see that I've assigned a numeral to each note of the set, with C being 0, C sharp, D flat being 1, D being 2, and so on up to 12. And this will help us when we perform operations on this prime row. So let's look at the first operation we can perform, which is simply transposition. So if I wanted to transpose up 5 half steps, or a perfect fourth, I could simply add 5 to each of the values of the prime row modulo 12, which means if that numeral exceeds 12, we just simply subtract 12 from that final value. So if I add 5 to 0, we get 5. If I add 5 to 11, we get 16. So then we subtract 12 and get 4. If we add 5 to 3, we get 8, and so on. So let's hear that transposed row. So the next operation we can perform is inversion. So this one, we simply will subtract each value of the prime row from 12 in order to get us our inverted set. So 0 is always going to be 0, but if we subtract 11 from 12, we get 1. If we subtract 3 from 12, we get 9, and so on. Let's hear that inverted row. And of course, that inverted row can also be transposed, as you see on the bottom line there, however we please. So the next operation we can perform is retrograde. So this is simply taking the prime row and writing it in reverse, starting from the last note and working our way to the first note. Let's hear how that sounds. And you can see on the bottom line that we've transposed that as we please. So moving on to the final operation I want to talk about, retrograde inversion. So this is performing the same operation as retrograde, but on the inverted set. Let's hear how that sounds. And then you can also see on the bottom row that we've written that in a different transposition as well. So if we want to make use of all of these in our compositions, how can we do that? So we can utilize the prime row as a motive, and then we can perform all these operations onto it to make a longer melody out of it. So you can do that simply by taking one of these examples and transposing it, or keeping it non-transposed, or you can take little chunks of that row and make smaller motives out of it and manipulate those. So let's take a look at how I utilize this in a jazz setting. So you can see here that I've used the prime row to start, and I've syncopated it into a swing rhythm, and then I've utilized the retrograde inversion, transposed up 7 half steps or perfect fifth, and written it out sequentially like that. Then you can see at the end there's this big cluster. What is that? That is the complement of the prime form. So we have 6 notes in our prime row. That means there are 6 notes of our 12-note chromatic scale that weren't utilized, and that's what those 6 notes are there. So I have those all as a cluster chord at the end. So let's take a listen to how that sounds. So that's pretty interesting, but now I'm feeling like it would be nice to have harmony in a few other select places throughout that melody. So let's take a look at how I can add those to that. So looking at the prime row, I might not want to have 6-note chords all the time. So in this case, I chose to utilize 4-note chords by utilizing only the first 4 notes of that prime row and inverting them and then placing them into a harmonic structure, as you see in the second row. So the first chord of that second row is the inverted form, and then I've simply written it in different versions in the other examples. So that gives us several different voicings to choose from in terms of harmonizing our melody. So I chose the E and the B flat of my row to be the notes that I wanted to harmonize. So for the E, I chose to use that fourth iteration in the second row, but that has a C on top, so I need to move it up 4 half steps in order to use it to work with my melody that has an E on top. So that's how that worked. And then the last chord has a B flat on top, but I wanted to use the first chord of the second row, which has a D flat on top. So I simply needed to transpose that up 9 half steps in order to utilize that chord. Then looking at the second half of the set, I've utilized the last 4 notes of the prime row and done a similar thing. I inverted it. I wrote out different inversions of the chords there in the second row and then chose the ones I liked in order to harmonize specific notes of my melody. So if we put all that together, we can see the final version. Let's take a listen to how that sounds. So hopefully that gives you a few different ways in which you can utilize these operations on motives that you've written in order to develop longer melodies to work with in your jazz compositions.
Thanks for watching today's mini lesson. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Drop any questions, comments, or suggestions for future videos in the comment section down below. To watch our full-length events and participate in live Q&As with our presenting artists, head over to jazzcomposerspresent.com. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.